So tonight I just got home from hanging out with a friend, and I wanted to make a quick video before I went to sleep, since I haven't made a video in so long and this video will be about the neurology of language learning. So since I'm a medical student, and medicine's also an interest of mine, and as is language learning, I wanted to share a little bit about how neurologically we think about language and how our brain processes language and how that applies, and I'm only speaking about the part that applies to us as language learners. This might be interesting for a way to think about how you're learning languages, and when you think about how your brain functions, I think it's two things that go together. So I drew a picture of a brain. It's not the best picture, but I'm not at all an artist. And so right in this section, there's two main sections that we'll be talking about and a connection between them. So in the temporal lobe right here, what you have is what's called Wernicke's area. So it was discovered, I believe, by a German scientist, Wernicke, that this area is the receptive area of language. So when we're speaking, and when we're listening to conversations, this is the area that understands, and it's also spoken and sign language or written speech, and it's proven that this is true with people that have strokes. And when you see a stroke that takes out this area, the person will be able to speak perfectly fine, but they won't make too much sense. They'll be able to produce speech, but when you speak to them or ask them, can you raise your right hand, can you show me 3 fingers, they won't understand what you're saying. They won't be able to follow these commands, and there are videos of this that you can see online. And the other part, though, in the frontal lobe then, is Broca's area. So Broca's area is where you produce all the speech, therefore. So if you have an area that's wrong with Broca's area, or a stroke that just affects primarily the frontal lobe in this area, what you will find is that you won't be able to speak at all. The person, unfortunately, will be very frustrated. They will say only certain words, and they'll just have complete trouble expressing themselves, but they'll be able to understand perfectly. So if you tell them, give them commands, they'll understand. They can read, but they won't be able to write. And it's really weird, but that's just how the brain works. And then there's an arcuate fasciculus that connects the two. So those are a bunch of white matter tracks, or axons, that connect one area to the other. So that's the communication, how they communicate. And so you might ask, well, and then this is on, actually from even this perspective, this is the left side of the brain. And everyone only speaks with one half of the brain. It's like you have only the majority of people, all of their language is on the left side. Like I'm assuming mine is as well. I'm right-handed, therefore probably I'm left hemisphere dominant, and that's where all my language is. So Broca's doesn't exist for me on the right, and neither does Wernicke's. But in those same areas, I'll have a certain areas to understand more prosody and tone, pitch, musicality. And so for languages, which is a very important part of language, and which is another, so both sides are important. So if I want to be able to speak a language well and develop an accent, I do believe both hemispheres have to be working at it, but they're specialized for different things. And that's why each one of these areas of the brain develops differently. And you have to practice each one of these. So people that say you can just read and listen, or just speaking, or just one area of language learning, that's enough. And they say that's enough. If you do that, the other thing will come. Well, yes, you'll get better at the other because there are connections. It's not like they're not connected at all. But if you truly want to develop in all aspects and progress in language learning, you have to work all parts of your brain, which means you have to speak, read, write, and listen, and do it all together. Because in order to speak, you have to speak a lot. You have to have lots of practice. In order to be able to understand, you have to listen a lot. In order to read and write, it's the same. And you need to develop those parts of the brain and really develop that in order to be proficient in your target languages. So really there's another part that's in the parietal lobe. I think it's the supramarginal lobe, and that actually has been shown, this is just a slide that shows that shows that people who are bilingual, I think there was a study that showed that people who have know more than one language have a much more active and a larger supramarginal sulcus, I guess is what they or gyrus, no, not sulcus, gyrus, supramarginal gyrus. I'm sorry, it's late. And I don't know too much about that, but it's another interesting fact of your brain and language learning. So this was a basic video just talking about a little bit about why I believe instead of focusing on just one thing, just you need to speak a lot or you need a lot of input versus output on this debate. I think in common sense, I always thought kind of supports this. You need to do a little bit of everything in order to be a well-rounded, good speaker and a functional person in a foreign language. So thank you.